Good evening, everyone, and welcome. I would like to call to order our Lucan Biddulph Council meeting for Tuesday, March the 16th. Is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest? It is hard to believe that we are just about to mark the 1-year anniversary of a state of emergency being declared by Lucan Biddulph. In fact, this meeting marks the 1-year anniversary of the last time we met in person as a council. Where has the year gone? In many ways, the year has flown by, and in other ways, it just seems like time has stood still. The past week has been full of media reminders of the year, anniversaries of milestones. As I prepared for tonight's opening remarks, I reflected back on the many messages I have shared with you. I am sure that you, in your own time, have taken the time to look back where we were a year ago, to reflect on your personal situations, or in general, what we have all, or in general, have looked back on all we have been faced with. We have made it through the year with much sacrifice and hard work. I'm not going to rehash the stressors. We are all very well aware of them. Last week, the federal government declared March 11th the National Day of Observance to commemorate the people who lost their lives and the significant impacts that we have all felt because of COVID-19. I would ask at this time that you all join me in a moment of silence and reflection and remembrance to recognize those lives lost and the sacrifice made by all during the past year. Thank you. As I mentioned earlier, I'm not going to think about all we have lost because there have been many positives this year. Collectively, I think we have all come to appreciate things that we've taken for granted in the past, things that we didn't even realize we were taking for granted. Coffees or drinks with friends, hugs with grandmas or our classmates, our coworkers. We have come to understand essential workers. Where would we have been in the early days without our grocery store clerks, our truck drivers, our food suppliers, and of course, our healthcare workers? So many sacrifices and stories of burden. What heroes they are. For some of us, they were the ones who held the hands of loved ones as they passed, held phones up so that words of comfort could be shared. In the early days, the mantra, "be kind," seemed to resonate with everyone. On more than one occasion, my husband and I have mused, why does it take something like this to remind us of something so basic? Let's hope that the mantra, "be kind when possible," remains with us, because it is always possible. As we celebrate St. Patrick's Day this week and look back on the year that has passed, this seems like an appropriate Irish blessing to share with you. May you live a long life fully of gladness and health, with a pocket full of gold as the least of your wealth. May the dreams you hold dearest be those which come true, and the kindness you stress keep returning to you. So today, we do have to move into the Committee of Adjustment and sit as a Committee of Adjustment for a minor variance application. So I would ask for a motion to adjourn our regular meeting and sit as a Committee of Adjustment under the Planning Act. A mover and seconder for that, please. Councillor Westman and Councillor Reagan. All opposed? And that's carried. So as I said, we do have a minor variance application in front of us. And at this time, I will ask Dan Fitzgerald to walk us through the application.
Through the chair, thanks to all the members of the committee tonight. The application that is before the committee is with respect to a property that's located at 34340 Roman Line, which is on the east side of Roman Line, on the northeast corner of the intersection at Roman Line and Fallon Drive. They are requesting a minor variance for permission to construct an accessory building within the front yard. So if everyone can see that there, the subject property is approximately a 1.6 acre parcel of land. They are situated within the agricultural area with agricultural lands that are in crop production surrounding the lot on all sides. They are designated agricultural area in the County of Middlesex official plan and agricultural in the township official plan. Additionally, the lands are zoned rural residential, RR zone, in the township comprehensive zoning bylaw, which does permit the use single detached dwelling and associated accessory uses. So as shown here on the plan, the owner is requesting approval to construct an accessory building on the lands, which would be located in the technical front yard or in front of the house. The zoning bylaw requires that the accessory buildings are located behind the front plane of a main use on the lands. In this case, would be the single detached dwelling. Due to the unique characteristics of the lot and the placement of the home, it is noted that the placement of an accessory building in an alternative location could present challenges for access to this particular property. Staff have reviewed the proposal against the Planning Act tests, local official plan, as well as the local zoning bylaw. The proposed format of development is in keeping with the residential character of the area. Staff also believe that the proposal is minor in nature and would not pose a negative impact to neighboring properties, given that the location of the accessory building does not abut onto any existing development. It would also be located behind an existing tree line, screening it from the road. Additionally, staff note that the proposal meets the intent of the zoning bylaw, as it does not exceed the size of the main use of the lands, nor would it, in the opinion of staff, detract from the main use of the property. Lastly, staff is satisfied that the proposal meets the intent of the official plan, given the residential designation of the lands and the ability to establish accessory uses for residential purposes. So given the above, planning staff is satisfied that the requested location of the accessory building satisfies the Planning Act tests and recommends that the subject application be approved. Thanks. I'm available to answer any questions.
Great. Thank you very much for that, Dan. Does the committee have any questions on the application or the recommendation at this time? Councillor Masterakis.
Yeah, just more, I've been making assumptions when you use the term staff and then you say planning staff, who does that encompass? Is that just your office? Does it include our staff, the municipality, or I've made some assumptions. If you clarify, thanks.
Through the chair, yeah, no, that's a fair point. So in reports, when I reference planning staff specifically, that would be my recommendation. When I reference staff or administration in general, that would be both myself as well as other administrative staff within Medolf.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments on the application? I know that the applicant is online, has joined us. I just didn't know, Ms. Jordan, if you had any comment at this time.
Nope, thank you.
Okay, thank you. So you've got a recommendation in front of you, and I would look to the committee for a motion to either accept or deny the planner's recommendation. Councillor Regan.
Motion to accept.
Motion to accept.
The recommendation from the planner.
Yep. And can I get a seconder for that? Councillor Westman. Any further discussion? All opposed? And that's carried. Thank you very much. Okay, so with that, we need to now adjourn Committee of Adjustment and reconvene a public meeting as council under the Planning Act. So if I could get a mover and a seconder to make that movement into a public meeting. Councillor Westman and Deputy Mayor Manders. All opposed? That's carried. Okay, and so in front of us tonight is an application for a zoning bylaw amendment and a draft plan of subdivision. And once again, Dan, we're happy to have you take us through this application.
So thank you through the mayor to all the members of council. The purpose of the application before council tonight is to engage the public regarding any comments that they have for consideration, to update council on the status and updates since the last public meeting, which was held on September 15th, 2020, and to provide council with a recommendation respecting the request of draft plan approval of subdivision application, which is 39T LB 2001. And requested for zoning bylaw amendment application ZBA 8-2020 for the lands that are identified and referred to as the Asable Fields subdivision. So the lands that we're referencing here, the property is located within the settlement area of Lucan Biddulph, Lucan specifically, and is on the south of Main Street and north of William Street. The two subject lots are bisected by an unopened Queen Street road allowance. And unopened in this case just refers to the fact that it's not currently constructed. The subject property consists of two separate rectangular parcels of land. The first is approximately a 1.7 acre parcel that's situated on the east side of the unopened Queen Street road allowance. The developer has proposed 12 single detached lots along this portion of land. The second is approximately a 4.86 acre parcel situated on the west side of the unopened Queen Street road allowance and is proposed to be developed as a medium density townhouse block. As a whole, the proposed subdivision would include a total of 6.56 acres of developable lands. The developer is also proposing to extend the currently unopened Queen Street allowance through to William Street to provide a direct access to the lands. In addition, the developer would also dedicate a portion of land to accommodate the extension of Elizabeth Street, providing a secondary vehicular as well as pedestrian access to the proposed subdivision. Existing land uses surrounding the property include single detached dwellings to the east, industrial zone lands to the south, agricultural lands to the west, and lands zoned open space for the purposes of community recreation to the north. The entirety of the property is within the urban settlement area of Lucan and is designated settlement area in the Middlesex County official plan and residential in the township official plan. Additionally, the property to the east is zoned a site-specific future residential exception zone, or FR-6, while the lands to the west are zoned a future residential FR zone. As previously noted and depicted on this plan, the developer is seeking to establish 12 single detached lots, blocked for multi-unit residential in the proposed format of cluster townhouses, and also seeks to establish a portion of the unopened Queen Street road allowance, in addition to extending Elizabeth Street as part of their request for draft plan of subdivision approval. In order to accommodate the development, the applicant has also requested two separate zones for the subject lands. As shown here, the proposed zoning map, the lands to the east of the unopened Queen Street road allowance are proposed to be a residential second density zone, consistent with the existing adjacent residential lands. Two exception zones are requested in order to reduce the exterior side yard setback for the corner lot on Elizabeth Street abutting the Queen Street road allowance, and that would be for 3 meter exterior side yard setback, whereas 3.5 meters is currently required. As well, to reduce the height of the first lot abutting the industrial lands to the south to a maximum of 1 story, whereas 10 meters is currently permitted in the R2 zone. The lands to the west of the unopened Queen Street Road allowance are proposed to be a site-specific residential third density exception zone for the purpose of permitting a multi-unit or cluster townhouse form of housing. The exception zone, as identified in the planning report, includes the following: a reduction to the minimum required front yard setback from 6 meters to 8 meters, a reduction to the minimum lot area of 150 square meters per unit, whereas 1,500 square meters is currently required, a minimum lot frontage of 6.1 meters, whereas 30 meters is required, clarification on maximum lot coverage being calculated from the overall lot area, a minimum interior side yard setback requirement of 1.5 meters, whereas 3 meters is required, a reduction to the required exterior side yard setback to 2.75 meters, whereas 8 meters is required on one side and 3 meters on the other. Rear yard depth of 6 meters, whereas 10 meters is currently required. Clarification on the outdoor amenity space requirement of 35% based on the total overall lot area. A minimum rear yard setback of 2.9 meters for a deck. The current zone would currently permit a 3.5 meter setback. A minimum interior side yard setback for a deck of 0 meters for a common wall of a townhouse unit, whereas 1.5 meters, or sorry, with a 1.8 meter screen, whereas 1.5 meters is currently required. And a rear and interior side yard setback of 0 meters for an air conditioner or heat pump, whereas 1.5 meters is currently required. So the plan that you see here on the screen just kind of gives you an idea as to what these regulations would permit. However, just as a note to council, this plan is obviously subject to change. It's just more of conceptual. So the county, Middlesex County official plan identifies Lucan as a settlement area and defers to the municipal official plan to delineate the boundaries of the settlement area. The lands are within the settlement area of Lucan and are designated residential within the township official plan. Planning staff have reviewed the proposal against the provincial policy statement, the County of Middlesex official plan, as well as the Township of Lucan-Biddulph official plan. Several policies have been identified in the planning report. Generally, I am of the opinion that the proposal meets the intent of the planning policy documents, as the lands are serviceable. They achieve a mix of unit types and densities. They are appropriately located on the lands designated for residential development, and development matches the existing residential character of the neighborhood. Likewise, they are in close proximity to municipal soft services, such as the community center as well as park, and overall represent an appropriate and efficient use of land. Subsequent to the last public meeting, the owner has since undertaken a comprehensive noise assessment of the property and surrounding industrial noise sources, including the grain elevator. Additionally, council passed a bylaw on November 17th, classifying the lands under the Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks, NPC 300 guidelines as Class 4, thereby increasing the potential acceptable noise levels for the residential development. The noise study brought forward by the owner includes a number of recommendations, which include the construction of a noise wall along the south boundary of the first residential lot and the industrial lands to the south, a limit of height of that same lot to 1 story, which is accommodated in the requested zoning, and a requirement to further buffer noise from the industrial lands specific to a motor which is located on a fertilizer mixer. These requirements have been included as preliminary draft plan conditions and would be included for consideration of future subdivision agreement if approved. Planning staff have reviewed the requested zoning provisions in association with the draft plan of subdivision and provided analysis in the planning report. Generally, planning staff are satisfied that the requested provisions are appropriate and desirable. Additionally, staff note that a large number of the provisions for the R3 site-specific zone are a direct result of the owner's desire to construct a vacant land condominium. Based on local interpretation of what a lot is, the individual unit is considered a lot, thereby requiring the reductions as requested. Staff also recommend breaking up the R2 zone into a standard R2 applicable to the 10 standard building lots and 2 site-specific R2 zones to deal with the request to reduce the exterior side yard in one instance and to reduce the maximum height for a development in compliance with the noise report for the other. Planning staff do note that they do not agree with one provision requested by the developer, that being to reduce the interior, side yard, as well as rear yard setbacks for air conditioners or heat pumps to 0 meters for the proposed conceptual vacant land condominium block. Planning staff have reviewed and note that no supporting evidence was provided to justify the reduction, thereby leaving planning staff with concerns that prematurely reducing the setbacks could lead to unintended noise impacts and non-compliance with MOE CP noise standards. Therefore, staff recommend not to include the requested provision until such time as supporting evidence is presented to staff and council. Planning staff also recommend the inclusion of a holding symbol on all lands. Those lands identified as R2 or any exception thereto, if adopted, would include a standard holding symbol not to be removed until the subdivision agreement is executed and services are in place and functional. Site-specific holding symbol is recommended for the site-specific residential third density exception zone, which would require the execution of a subdivision agreement, municipal services to be in place and functional, a site plan agreement, and a traffic impact assessment to be completed and implemented to the satisfaction of the township and county prior to its release. And all the subject applications are consistent with the provincial policy statement, in conformity with the county and township official plans, and represent good land use planning. The application has been circulated to the community in compliance with the requirements of the Planning Act. I note that only one individual participated in the public open house by the developer, as well as the previous public meeting. At time of writing the report, no objections were received. Subsequent to drafting the report, a public comment was received and circulated to council in advance of the meeting tonight, noting an objection to the proposal for the stated reasons of the loss of a soccer field, a loss of extra camping space for Bacon Fest, and concerns about the noise new residents would be faced with in this area. Staff also circulated the application to internal departments and external agencies in advance of tonight's meeting, and note that no major concerns were raised. Comments from agencies as well as staff have been incorporated into the preliminary draft plan conditions, which is appended to the planning report. So given the above, staff are recommending that council of the Township of Lucan-Biddulph recommend the issuance of draft plan approval to the County of Middlesex in regards to the application for plan of subdivision 39T LB 2001 and subject to the conditions attached to the planning report, and that zoning bylaw amendment file number ZBA 8/2020, subject to a hold symbol, be approved in principle, and upon the granting of the draft approval of the County of Middlesex, that the planner be directed to forward implementing bylaw to Lucan-Biddulph Council for consideration. Thank you, and I'm available to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you for that, Dan. We'll start off with questions from council. Councillor Reagan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I don't know whether Dan or maybe Ron could answer it, but when I'm looking at the map, and we're talking, I know we had the discussions about the noise, and we saw that study. I'm just wondering, so I'm looking at the map here with William Street and the grain elevator, and I'm wondering, and if it's, I'm just projecting, but if there's any more industrial growth along there, or there's upgrades made to any of that equipment, and that affects the noise level, does that, I'm just wondering what kind of, is that possible? Would that happen? And how would that affect the residents sort of in that new subdivision? If that makes sense? I don't know if Ron can answer that, or if Dan can answer that maybe.
Through the chair, yeah, I'll try and take a stab at it. I'll leave Ron on that one. So
thanks.
Yeah. So technically speaking, any existing industrial noise source within that particular area would have an approved noise study that has been issued by MOE CP, which basically permits them to emit a certain level of noise. So the study that was done by the consultant basically takes into account what that noise is at this particular point in time based on their existing approvals in place with MOE. If there was any changes to those lands or subsequent changes in development within those industrial areas, they would be subject to comply with the MOE guidelines for noise restriction. So they basically anything that changes within the area now has to have consideration for that residential if it's approved, the residential subdivision, which would be Asable Fields, as well as all other existing residential lands within the area.
Right. Okay, thank you. And I was just asking, because I was just addressing one of those concerns that I saw in that recent note from that resident. Right. Thank you. Thanks, Madam Mayor.
Through the chair, do you mind if I just add something to that?
Oh, no, absolutely, Dan.
I would note that with respect to the noise study, there is an inclusion of noise buffering measures that are required to basically occur that makes sure that residential development would basically meet noise standards as per the MOE requirements. So if there is an existing noise source that is beyond current permissible standards, that noise source is actually going to get buffered to a point where it might actually benefit the existing residents within an area by blocking noise through the installation of a noise wall or barrier in one instance, or the other recommendation in the report is actually buffering a noise point source, which is a motor or a fertilizer mixer. So existing residents within the area may actually see a benefit to that, given that the fact that it may actually reduce existing noise standards within the area.
Okay. Thank you for that. Okay, Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, just a couple questions. I noticed, well, the last meeting we had, I had learned that our bylaws don't state for visitor parking, so I was glad to see this in the application. So how are you determining, Dan, what the needs are then for parking? I'm just curious, or how are you determining that?
Through the chair, that's a good point. So the number that we came at with respect to visitor parking standards is just kind of a universal standard that's applied across most municipalities, which is at a rate of one stall per 10 units. It's just kind of standard rate that they use around, especially in Southwestern Ontario. In this particular case, based on the number of units and proposed conceptual stalls, albeit conceptual at this point in time, they're actually exceeding that number. So again, that's just a minimum target that we would be requesting they achieve. However, obviously based on their current plan, they're actually exceeding that minimum number.
Okay. And the other thing is for the applicant, if they could comment on it or not, regardless of how this tracks along, is the community guaranteed the soccer fields for this year, the full year out, regardless of how this project tracks? Wonder if the applicant could comment.
Okay, I know the applicant is online. I don't know whether Mr. Highland or Mr. Van Giel want to speak to that.
Through the chair to Councillor Manders. Yeah, we have confirmed with municipal staff that they will be available to use the soccer field for this coming season.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Matt. Do you have anything else, Deputy Mayor? Okay. Any other questions or comments from council at this time on the application in front of us? I guess I have a couple. Just you keep using the term conceptual, and this is what's in front of us today. I guess my concern is, and we've talked about it with other developments in the community with regards to future changes, and how can we, and understanding that this is conceptual, I understand that, but how can we be assured that going forward what they've asked for is what they're going to keep to, and that there won't be further requests for further setbacks or amendments or that sort of thing?
Through the chair to the mayor. So I would just point out, so when I refer, I'm more referring to the multifamily block as opposed to the singles. So the single family homes as proposed in the draft plan would remain as such, and the zoning as requested would be, if approved, the R2, and then there's the 2 exception zones based on change of the standard. So in terms of the conceptual zone, it's fairly common when it comes to draft plan approval for subdivisions when the developer doesn't actually have, a final plan in place to request a zoning based on the standards that they believe that they're going to build to at that particular point in time. And then you can see changes come down the pipeline, in the future. We did work with the developer in this case to come up with what they believe is their, for all intents and purposes, and goal, if you will, for the townhouse block plan, and then made sure that the standards that are requested in the bylaw do in fact meet their needs. And that's kind of why you're seeing the very large list of the different changes. And that's specifically based on the request for them to build a vacant land condominium in the future, which is viewed as an individual lot as opposed to a unit base for a standard condo. So I can't say that they won't come back and request more changes in the future. Unfortunately, everyone has the right to do that. But what I would say is we have worked with them. We've done our best to try and build a standard which we think is implementable in terms of a development on the lands. And certainly if requests to change any of that in the future was brought forward by the developer, certainly we would have to view that and see whether or not any changes are appropriate.
Okay, thanks for that. I was a little confused, and maybe you could just explain again the setbacks for the air conditioning units where you didn't agree with that. Can you just explain? I was confused by that. Do you mind just kind of re-explaining it for me?
Yeah, through the chair to the mayor. So specifically, the township bylaw right now requires a minimum standard for a 1.5 meter setback for an air conditioner or heat pump, interior side yard or rear yard. And what the intent of that minimum standard is to basically provide a minimum buffer distance to allow for noise dissipation for that particular unit. So the request of the developer to reduce to 0 meters, okay, without any specific evidence that it wouldn't create or would not create a negative impact on the adjacent properties. We felt that it was a bit of a concern from our perspective, and we're not saying that it's necessarily inappropriate. We're just saying before we agree to something of that nature, we would want to see evidence that it would not create a negative impact to the properties in the future.
Okay, thank you for that. And then Deputy Mayor hit on the parking issue that I had a question of, and I think again this might be more snow removal, but I guess the demands on public works from our point of view, the single detached homes, I'm assuming we will be responsible obviously for the snow removal, but in the cluster townhomes, if they're condo, then that would be private snow removal, correct?
Through the chair to the mayor, typically that would be private, depending on what deal they work out with the local township. So I've seen instances where cities or townships do agree to do snow removal through servicing agreements, but usually it's done privately. Okay,
and if I guess that question though, then if that arrangement would be to be made, at what point would that arrangement be made? Would it be made at site plan? Because are we confident our equipment can get, through? If that was something that was to be taken on.
Yeah, through the chair, I would maybe defer to Jeff, but I would typically say that in a vacant land condominium situation where there is a private road, those services would be done privately and not done by the township.
Okay. Jeff, did you have anything?
Madam Mayor, just a comment. Yeah, so when we go to see the layout, a lot of it will depend on the road, but yeah, if we're going to start going on to private property, that's a huge change. That would be something that would be a council decision to make. And the road itself would have to meet a certain standard for our equipment because our equipment is a little bigger than the private sector. So right now, I don't see that as an option going forward. So.
Okay, thank you. And I think that was all I had at this point. So before I pass it over, see if the applicant has any other questions or has any comment. Did you, again, council, have any more questions? Then at this point, I will ask the applicant if the applicant has any comment to make.
Through the chair, Madam Mayor, at this point in time, we have no additional comments. I think Dan did a great job of explaining what we're trying to do with this project, and we agree with his recommendation. Okay, thank you for that. I know that there are a couple of members from the public that had asked to join in, so I didn't know if they had either comment, and I think that would be Mr. McClellan and Mr. Haskett.
Hello there, it's Colin. I would make a couple quick comments if that was okay.
Yep, absolutely.
Thank you very much for this, and kudos to everyone for listening to a couple concerns that I had. I think they've all been addressed. I basically joined this evening just to ensure that there was going to be access through to William Street. So I'm glad to hear that that's been accomplished. I'll be interested to know how that's going to play out with the water tower and the commercial traffic, but I presume you've got a good handle on that. So just listening as I've gone through, I just have a couple of additional questions or comments. I guess number two, the property in the northwest corner identified as R2-2H, which they're asking about setbacks along Queen Street. I still envision, long after you're all out of office and I'm not in office and we're all ready to retire, I envision that road may eventually get opened. The entrance is shift around the arena. The traffic is going to follow it with the parking lot, and we may want a road that goes out to William Street from the arena. I'm not sure that we want to change any setbacks along that said road to accomplish that. And then just lastly, I'll be honest, the condos, there was a lot of discussion on some potential changes, and it's a big project. I know that there are a lot of balls in the air. It feels to me like we still have quite a bit of dirt in Lucan Biddulph, and I know that it's getting more expensive and more difficult. But when I look at the condo units that are being constructed over by Wilberforce School, I hope that we're not putting them in any tighter than that. I really do. And if that's what we're doing, then that's fine. It's been done, but let's not squeeze people into our community any tighter than we've got them there. But otherwise, that's it. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak and for all of your good work.
Okay, thanks, Colin. And then did Mr. McClellan have any comment? That would be Stacy. Lisa?
Oh.
No, okay.
Hello?
Right. Oh, yep, Dave, did you
All right,
have?
it worked. We're unmuted. No, I didn't have any follow-on comments. I was just listening in to see what the plan was with the area. And I actually agree with Colin that Queen Street extension would be good as a long-term plan. That was my only comment.
Okay, thank you for that. That's duly noted. So I guess maybe the follow-up from that, Dan, would be what would the setbacks have effect on a potential opening of Queen Street in the very far future?
Through the chair to the mayor. So I would say that generally speaking, extending road connections and completing streets is always a win in terms of planning, and connecting streets is always a great idea. So I agree with everything that has been said with respect to Queen Street. If it does get extended to the future, I'm all for that. So I was definitely cognizant of that when it came to the setback requirements of that exterior side yard. So in this case, the owner is requesting to reduce by 0.5 meters on the exterior side yard. So the current standard is 3.5. They're looking to go down to 3. We did look at that in terms of development for site triangles. So the municipality does have site visibility triangle setback requirements from corner lots. They would still have to meet that requirement regardless of that exterior side yard setback. So we felt that it could still and would still be appropriate in terms of if an extension did occur in the future.
Thank you for that clarification. Jeff.
Yeah, and just a follow-up comment, Madam Mayor, the Queen Street, if you want to call that, or Community Drive, I know we keep using two different names here. The profile of that road will still be a standard road. We're not narrowing anything. We'll have some form of sidewalk lighting, street lighting, that sort of thing. So I just want to make sure that we're talking about the development, but the street itself will be a full-fledged municipal street, just like the rest of them in town. So.
Okay, and so if that was to be connected, that could all be accomplished with those setbacks.
Exactly.
Okay, all right. Very good. Okay, so one last call out to council for any further questions or clarifications with regards to the application. Dan.
Sorry, I know I'm not a council member. I just wanted to, through the chair, address Colin's comment with respect to the standards for the R3 zone.
Yes.
So the standards that have been requested by the developer represent basically a mirror image of what's happening on phase 2 of the lands in Ridge Crossing. So they do mirror a similar width requirement, as well as depth and area, as well as setbacks from the front as well as the rear yard. But keep in mind, the standards that are applied on phase 2 are a bit larger than the standards that were applied on phase 1. So what you're going to see in development for phase 2 will be a bit bigger in terms of lot areas, setbacks, than you see in phase 1 of development on that particular site. But it's certainly not getting any smaller. And the developer's plan that you actually see, the conceptual plan, albeit it is conceptual, they can change it, does actually accommodate bigger standards in terms of minimum unit widths than just 6.1.
Okay. All right. Thank you for that information. And Colin has thanked you for that in the chat as well. So, okay, if there aren't any other further questions or comments from council, then I would ask for a motion to reconvene our regular meeting. Move out of the public meeting. Councillor Mastarakis and Councillor Regan. All opposed, and that's carried. So I do have a draft motion, a possible motion for council to consider. It's basically the recommendation that Dan read. I will read it again, and then I would ask for a mover and a seconder for that, and we can see how that goes. So the possible or the draft motion is that Council of the Township of Lucan Biddulph recommends the issuance of a draft plan approval to the County of Middlesex in regards to application for plan of subdivision 39T-LB2001 and subject to the conditions attached to the planner's report number PL-07-2021 dated March 16th, 2021, and that the zoning bylaw amendment file number ZBA-8-2020, subject to a holding H symbol, be approved in principle, and upon the granting of draft plan approval by the County of Middlesex, that the planner be directed to forward the implementing bylaw to Lucan Biddulph Council for consideration of approval. If I can get a mover and a seconder for that, please.
I'll move that.
Councillor Regan, seconder. Deputy Mayor Manders. All opposed. And that's carried. So Dan, what are the next steps after that? This?
So through you, Madam Mayor, technically speaking, the municipality will now make a recommendation back to County Council, which will view the draft plan approval and make recommendation and decision on that. And then respecting, a future outcome of that, we will bring back a comprehensive zoning bylaw if approved by County Council for implementation. We'll now begin the process of finalize approvals and then working on subdivision agreements and implementation of the plan.
Okay. And do we have a timeline with when it will go to County Council?
Through the chair, as soon as possible.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Okay. That is it for our planning discussions today. So thanks very much, Dan, for walking us through them as always. You're certainly welcome to stay for the whole evening, but understand if you want to go spend time with your family. And I will thank you for showing your Irish spirit and wearing your Irish tie. So good on you. Okay. Thanks very much, Dan. Moving on though to the rest of our council meeting, we do have a delegation with us tonight. And at this point, I'd like to welcome Lucas from Jacobs to present the Lucan Biddulph 2020 annual report for our water system. So I see Lucas has joined us, and over to you.
Okay, thank you very much, Madam Mayor. And thank you, Lucan Biddulph Council members. As mentioned, I'm here to present the 2020 Lucan Biddulph Drinking Water System Annual Report. So instead of reading the report word for word, I just thought I would highlight a few interesting notes that I'd like to touch on.
Great, that sounds like a good plan.
So on page 2 of the report, this is a requirement from OREG 170 that the owner or the operating authority of the drinking water system present the annual report to council by no later than the end of March. And if you just scroll down to near the bottom of page 2, modifications and maintenance to the water systems. There were no major modifications to the 2 booster stations. In 2020, there were no water main breaks. There were, however, several leaks in the system. 2 fairly minor leaks and 1 was a fairly large leak in Granton. The next page, the installation of new water main. There were 3 sections of new water main in 2020. 1 was on Miller Drive, the second in Old Clover, and the third was the Nagle Drive addition. The compliance, we were fully in compliance with the exception of 3 minor non-compliance situations. The first one being that it was just a simple little mistake where chlorine residuals were not added to the chain of custody. So whenever we take a sample, there's some paperwork that goes along with it that we send to the lab. And it was just missed that the residuals were not included. The results of the drinking water samples were all fine. It was just we couldn't prove that we had chlorine with the samples. And the second one had to do with logbook entries. So there was a couple of occasions where we got called in after hours and we would write something in the logbook that there was an issue, And then what lacked sometimes was our, what we did to fix the issue. So we would maybe make a minor modification to a chlorine dosing pump. And the next day we wouldn't have a follow-up blurb in the logbook. So the inspector wasn't sure, well, did that increase of chlorine dose work or did it not work? And so the entry was made that there was an issue and that we got called in, but on a couple of occasions, we failed to follow up on that initial call-in.
And maybe, Madam Mayor, if I may,
Yep.
Lucas, I talked to Lucas and I said I would address the third compliance issue. And through COVID, a relief order was issued by the province that any retired water licensed operator could help to fill in during the COVID situation. And so obviously we had John, who has been a number of years as our licensed water operator, was our backup to Matt and Andrew. And in that process, one long weekend, John was taking the reins just to double check, make sure everything was running right on the weekend. And it turns out the order was revoked on the Friday prior to that weekend. So before we could get things changed up, we crossed a line there, which we immediately brought that back and brought that John no longer functions as an operator again. So I just wanted to adjust that because it did kind of fall more along my lines because I was working with John and Matt and Andrew at that point. So, but.
Okay, thanks for that, Jeff.
Do we have a question, Councillor?
Yeah, Councillor Regan?
Madam Mayor?
Yep.
Thank you. I just want to go back to that compliance in the second one. So it's not all maintenance activities were properly recorded in plant logbooks during the after hour call-ins, and that's kind of concerning to me. And I just want to know, like, specifically what's done or what was done to make sure it doesn't happen. Because to me, I don't know, that to me sounds pretty serious. So I'm concerned about that.
Yeah, so all of the information was recorded for the call-in, but just something minor. There was just no follow-up. So the day after, Councillor, we would go and complete our checks, and there would be all the checks would be fine. There was just a couple of times where we didn't specifically mention anything about the call-in the previous night, but chlorine readings, sample results were all in compliance. And I believe there was one instance, Councillor, that we increased the chlorine one night, and the next morning the results were normal, and we wrote those numbers down. But what we should have done was just said we will keep the chlorine dose at this and this rate and not change it back to what it was the previous day. Does that make sense?
Okay. All right. Okay. Thank you. Right. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Okay, thanks. Okay, Lucas.
Okay, and thank you, Jeff, for your comments. The next page, so page 4 are the flows.
Mm-hmm.
In 2020, we averaged 950 cubic meter daily average flow for the entire system. And the next page, I just have a couple of charts and graphs. You can see the summer months, there is an increased water usage, which kind of makes sense. There's more stuff going on outside, right, and whatever. So And I'll just go on page 7. I have the annual report. This is the section that we submit to the ministry. So again, January 1st to December 31st. On page 2 of the MOE report, or page 8 of the entire report, I have list all water treatment chemicals. That 12% sodium hypochlorite, that's just a fancy word for chlorine. It's 12% liquid chlorine. If there was any confusion on that. And then the next page, microbiological testing. I just wanted to make mention on the right-hand side of that chart, kind of halfway down the page, is range of HPC results, less than 10 to 2,000. What HPC is, it's the heterotrophic plate count. So this is a test that we have to complete. It's MOE mandatory sampling. And this value indicates the number of organisms in drinking water. There is no adverse limit to HPC. There's not a number that if you get over a certain value that you have to notify anybody. It is just simply a test done to see a number of organisms. And I just thought I'd mention, because that 2,000, it seems alarming, or it seems that something wasn't right, but that's not a crazy number. There are some values. I'm not sure what the max was in last year's report, but I'm sure it was around 1,000 or 2,000. Now, in saying that, if you get multiple of those high numbers, like week after week after week, you get anywhere from 1,000 to 10,000. It may indicate some deterioration in your distribution system. So it may mean that you may have to flush more water main. It may mean you have to look at replacing some older sections. But I would say that 2,000 is not a major concern. And just to the left of that, your E. coli results and your total coliform, those are your big ones. Those are your compliance. If you have even a 1 value in either of them, you notify the MOE, you notify the health unit. There may be an issue, but all of that, all those samples came back good. And just slightly down, the summary of inorganic parameters. I think I mention this each year, but the reason why they're all non-applicable is because inorganic and organic sampling has to be done by the source. So the Lake Huron primary supply system has to sample for that. And I believe that's every 36 months are those organic and inorganic sampling. Kind of halfway down here on page 10, I have a summary of lead testing. There were 20 samples taken from residential, so private homes. Mm-hmm. There was 4 exceedances in lead in private homes. So we had to notify the health unit, and we gave some literature to the homeowners that indicated the potential health risks with having lead in your drinking water. And all of the municipal samples there, the distribution, non-residential, they were all within limits. And I believe that's all that I have, Madam Mayor. I would ask that council accept the report, the 2020 report. I'd be happy to answer any further questions or.
Okay, that is great. Thank you very much for that, Lucas. Any questions or comments from council on what he's highlighted. I'm sure you've all taken the time to read it in depth. Councillor Mastarakis.
Yeah, just a question on the lead amount. Is that the typical number of samples? You're doing 20 and 0.2% is showing positive. So is that average, below average, should be zero, or what happens? What's the risk to the residents and the municipality?
Well, there's all the municipal lead services and water main are replaced, so there's no more municipal lead left. We have, it's in our drinking water license, and that's specific for Luke and Bidulph. It asks for so many samples. And we're in a 5-year kind of a testing period. So we take 20 samples spring and 20 samples in the fall. And we pick the same homes when we're talking about the residential ones. Sometimes they're over and sometimes they're under. Each time they are over, we send like I say, a package that indicates that, you know, that we would recommend them, but that's up to the homeowner. So from the property line in, it's up to the homeowner. They can do as they wish. If they want to spend the money and replace it, great. If not, the municipal water goes up to the property line, and we provide water with no lead in it, or with lead results in the allowable range, and the rest is up to the homeowner councillor.
Thank you, Lucas.
Okay, any other questions or comments for Lucas? Deputy Mayor.
Just wondering on the leaks, on the irregularity of the water flow. I'm just curious I think you said one was a small leak, one was a larger leak. Like, I'm just, to see that irregularity, I'm just curious, is that hours, days, weeks? What sort of, you know, I'm just curious, what your guess is from noticing that, you know, when you felt it started, the irregularity, to trying to search to find the problem.
If you want, Lucas, I maybe have a little bit more information on that. And on particularly the larger leak in Granton was one that built up gradually to the deputy mayor's question. We saw, and that was the hardest part about that leak, is we didn't all of a sudden see a large usage go up overnight. And what it was a small hole in the pipe. And gradually, as it wore against the stone, it got bigger and bigger. It wasn't until we noticed a large amount of water during a dry season going into the storm at the back, or into a catch basin. So we did more investigation and realized there had to be a leak somewhere in the neighborhood. So we John and staff believe that leak was forming over about 2 years. And we traced it back. You can kind of see a rise in Granton in over a 2-year period. So as you looked at the figures from month to month, you wouldn't really see a big increase. But if you look at it as a yearly or a 2-year, you know, over a couple of years, you would all of a sudden see like the increase there. So, and then the minor ones are minor enough that you're not really going to see a huge increase here and there, other than the water showing up on the surface of the road or surface of the ground. So,
thank you.
Any other questions?
Yeah, thank you, Jeff. Oh, sorry. Yeah, thank you, Jeff. And just to add to that, Deputy Mayor Manders, some leaks you'll notice within hours, right? They'll pop on the road, on the pavement. Somebody will drive by and they'll call us. So some you'll notice very quickly, and others, others are a little bit harder to find. Thank you.
Thanks for that. Lucas, any other questions? I just had a couple. With the flows, was wondering in comparison, especially in the spring and early summer months of 2020 compared to 2019 when everybody was home, was there a difference? I know or would you know that just off the top of your head? I'm just curious because I see the spike obviously in the summer, which I don't think is uncommon. But I just wondered if you had a comparison from 2019 to 2020 and everybody living at home and being at home, I should say.
I don't have the 2019 numbers right in front of me, Madam Mayor. The flow generally were higher though in 2020. How much of that has to do with the leaks? How much of that has to do with just overall development in Lucan? But I will definitely look into that or send some numbers to see if there was 50 cubic meters a day, 100 cubic meters a day, or virtually nothing.
Okay, sure. Jeff, did you have something to add to that?
Yeah, and I think this because we've been looking into water usage versus residential and businesses and that sort of thing. One of the things that popped up during the COVID was the house usage has gone up just because people are home. So I don't think, Madam Mayor, that's a surprise to anybody, but it's probably not showing up on Lucas's flows because the school was not using water. Businesses weren't using as much water, even like a Tim Hortons, even though they maybe were open, certainly were maybe not serving as much coffee.
Right.
So those sort of things on Lucas's side trade off a little bit. But if we talk about residential homes, there definitely was a use up for everybody who stayed home. So
thanks. And then just keeping on with the flows, Lucas, how close are we to reaching our system capacity?
We aren't very close at all, Madam Mayor. The capacity of the Lucan booster station is 3,600 cubic meters a day. So that's how much those pumps can pump to the tower. So our 950 is a third or a quarter of the capacity. And that kind of makes sense. Those high lift pumps on William Street, they typically run anywhere from 5 to 7 hours a day. If those pumps were on 20 hours, then you'd start to maybe get a little worried, but no, I don't think we are getting close to capacity.
Okay, that's good to know. And then just one last question. I just wondered in general, I think it's the question that everybody should be reflecting on, at the year mark of COVID, but how has COVID and how and what's been asked of us, how has that affected your operations?
It's obviously, the whole social distancing, the whole, we try to keep our staff separated as much as we can. There are certain tasks where you just have to be two people to fix something or to lift something. And obviously the proper PPE and hand sanitizer, goes a long way. Staff are asked to fill out a health screening check each morning. And as far as, compliance or anything, last spring we did fill out or we applied for lead relief. So last April, we asked that we not go into anyone's homes to collect lead samples. So they granted the relief, but then we ended up just collecting them in July again. So we still had our 2 sets for the year. We just postponed. But other than that, we've been fortunate. chemical providers, electricians, they've all been available. And the nice part about Jacobs is we have other municipalities. We have backup personnel. We have an electrician on staff. We have a millwright on staff. So even if there was an issue getting someone, we have our own staff. We are capable of kind of helping out.
Well, that's good. Hopefully this time next year, we won't be living with the same sort of restrictions and protocols, but appreciate the update on that. So thanks for joining us, Lucas. And as always, it's great to have this presentation. We certainly appreciate the partnership that we have with Jacobs. And I know that Jeff certainly appreciates the working, and his guys really appreciate the working relationship. So it's very beneficial to both of us. So I would ask for a motion to accept the Lucan Biddulph Water Distribution System Annual and Summary Report for 2020 as presented for information. If I could get a mover and seconder for that, please. Councillor Westman and Deputy Mayor Manders. All opposed? And that's carried. Okay, thanks very much, Lucas, and hopefully the next time we see you in person.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor, and thank you, councillors.
Great. Good night. Moving on to our council minutes, we've got a set of minutes in front of you for March the 2nd. And if nothing needed to be amended or spoken to, then I would ask for a mover and a seconder to approve the council minutes for March 2nd, approved as circulated. Councillor Westman and Daniel Regan, or Councillor Regan. I'm sorry, Councillor Masterakis, that was just to second it. Okay, so I think we're good on the minutes. All opposed to accepting those? And those are carried. Business arising from the minutes. There's been a few items that have been added to the business arising, but for the most part, everything is ongoing. And unless council saw something that needed to be added, then we'll move on to correspondence. And moving on to correspondence, there's been two items that have been pulled for our consideration. And the first one is a letter from Minister Steve Clark with regards to COVID recovery funding. And I'll ask Catherine to speak to this one.
Yeah, just a little bit of good news. So the province has given us another $79,079 to help us with our COVID-19 operating costs and pressures for 2021. And they've also pushed off the reporting until June. They're combining the money we got last year from Safe Restart and then this new 2021 program. And instead of having one report due in March, they decided to combine it and have an interim report this June and a final report next year. And then, yes, I've already signed it back, and hopefully we'll see that money, but it'll come into deposit. So that brings our amount for 2021, in addition to the $25,000 at $104,079 for 2021, in addition to what we got in 2020 as well. So this good news keeps coming. But if we don't use it, we can put in reserves until we need to. There's no force, like you don't have to, there's no timeline to spend it. Mm-hmm. And you can keep it in reserves and it will not be clawed back.
Very good. Any questions on that one? Okay, so the second one is fire safety grant announcement. And I think that Ron was going to speak to this one. Again, it's about some more money coming our way.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So yes, again, more money. It just keeps falling from the sky. So thank goodness. We've got $5,700 was granted to the Township of Lucan Biddulph, and both of our fire departments are the recipients of that. Both fire chiefs have been in contact with each other to determine where that money was best spent. You can either spend it on COVID-related expenses or training. It looks like both of them are going to be submitting something for training. So that announcement came through last Friday, and we have to submit what we are going to spend that money on by this Friday. So we're scrambling at the moment, but we will meet that deadline, and that $5,700 will be put to good use.
Great. Questions on that one? Okay, the rest of them are all for your information, unless there was something that any of you wanted to speak to. I would ask for a mover and a seconder to receive the items of correspondence for information. Councillor Regan and Councillor Mastarakis, all opposed, and that's carried. Okay, moving on to our committee reports, CEDC.
No updates since the last meeting. Thank you.
Yep. Blue Water Recycling.
A meeting this Thursday.
Okay. Lake Huron, I did have a meeting and I have to apologize that I left my notes at home. I will report back at our next meeting. Fire boards, nothing. ABCA and Upper Thames.
We have ABCA meeting is on Thursday, and the Upper Thames River is the following Thursday, or following Tuesday, sorry. So I won't have anything to report until the next meeting for that. I do want to actually mention thank you to our Chief Administrative Officer, Ron, for circulating the information and email regarding the Asaba Bayfield Conservation Area issues that had been expressed about motorized vehicles like dirt bikes and quads entering the conservation areas. This is a pretty serious violation, and it's really not good for the environment. Also, off-leash dogs, people walking their dogs in the conservation area off-leash. These are also things that will be addressed by some enforcement staff. So I'm grateful that that's going to get communicated out to the public through our social media, and because I've witnessed that myself at the Lucan Conservation Area over the past year. And, I've driven by there and seen tire tracks that are clearly like a dirt bike kind of tire track going in. And so I just want to make sure people understand that that's not an appropriate use of those spaces.
Okay, thank you for that, Councillor Westman. Parks and Recreation.
Thank you, through you, Madam Mayor. In front of you, you have the minutes from the Parks and Rec Advisory Committee meeting held on Wednesday, March 3rd. Just a few highlights from that meeting. We brought forward to the committee some of the grants that we have been applying for some projects in Lucan Biddulph. Unfortunately, one of them has since been returned for the outdoor exercise equipment. We were not successful for that one. We made an announcement to them about the spring summer ice that we have going on at the community center, as well as some discussion about the community guide, the importance of it to the community, especially those without access to social media, kind of how we should go forward with that. I know there's some suggestions for additional material in there, and perhaps I know since the meeting we've had some discussions that an annual issue as opposed to a biannual issue may afford some more pages to allow for some more content, as a lot of people seem to find it a very useful guide to have for resources of the area. As well, the final subject we broached was there was a motion for a revision to the terms of reference for including for membership. This is something I've addressed later in my staff reports, but I don't know, through you, Madam Mayor, if you feel that this should be the more appropriate time to discuss this at the moment.
No, we can take that through in your report. That's fine. Okay. Okay, and of course, those are draft minutes in front of you.
Yes.
Okay, thanks for that, Paul. Moving on to staff reports, Ron.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Three quick verbal updates here. The first one is a pretty major one. Dr. Vigera had reached out to us probably 2 weeks ago, right after the last meeting, with notice that she is looking for new office space. The current building that she's in, the old Shillelagh, is going to be redeveloped in the near future, and she has been given notice that she needs to vacate the premises to make way for the new construction. There is commercial space available in the new building for her. However, obviously with the demolition and reconstruction, she has to relocate. So Lisa DeBoer and I are working hard with her to try and find some location for her. She is probably the doctor with the most rostered patients from Lucan Bradolph here, so she is very important to us. So again, if anybody listening or on council can think of office space in this area that could possibly be used for her office, please let us know, either Lisa or myself. So that's number one, and it's occupying a lot of our time. Number two is the province late last week, I believe, came out with a notice that they are looking to update, possibly update the council code of conduct. And we did have some discussion about that during the recent Nigel Belchamber training session. So I did reach out to our integrity commissioner. I sent him an email asking him if he could update our code of conduct. And I think the last time it was updated was 2016. So it is time for that to be done. I haven't heard back from him what his time frame is on that, but it may hinge a little bit on what the province ultimately decides with the new legislation. I don't think it's prudent for us to change and then have to change it again once the province finalizes what those changes are going to be. And we already talked about the 5,700 for the funding for the fire. The last one was the official plan update. Just a quick one. We did have a meeting with Stuart Finlater. He is the person in charge of bringing forth that official plan update for the municipality. It's obviously a large project, and it's taken a while. We did have one meeting last week. We've got two more this week. We are getting near to the end. We are hoping to come back to council with the draft report and also some I guess path forward with regards to public input into that process. So hopefully I'll have an update for you before the end of the month on that.
Great.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Great, thank you. Any questions for Ron on this, on what he's presented? Okay, Tina, do you have anything from your office?
Just a couple of things, Kathy. Thank you. There's a motion included for the AMCTO conference for myself and Lisa DeBoer to attend. Also, the AMO conference, I received confirmation from Daniel and Dave that they wish to attend, but if anyone else wishes to attend, please let me know, as I'll be bringing a motion at next meeting for that. Early bird registration is open until April 30th for the AMO conference. And included in the bylaws tonight is an updated fees bylaw. The changes that were made were left highlighted, and those changes are in accordance with recent water rates and sewer rates. And that's everything from my end.
Okay, thanks, Tina. Any questions for Tina? Okay, finance, Catherine. Oh, sorry, before Catherine, we've got Arnie here, sorry. And Arnie's got a update for our year-end summary for 2020. So it's great to see you, Arnie. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Mayor. Nice to be back. I'm happy to come out anytime to say hello.
From the comfort of your own home.
Indeed. I'm happy to meet. I can't wait to meet in the office together.
I know. Yeah.
So I appreciate council's patience in getting last year's annual report. It took a little bit longer this year for me to get it to you, so I appreciate your patience. But I'm here tonight to provide you a summary of building permit activity and bylaw enforcement activity for last year, for 2020. Just on my screen, I'm going to flip to my report for me to look at. I'm not sure if Tina has it on the screen or not there, but essentially 2020 obviously was a very exceptional year for a number of ways. With COVID, we had to deal with a number of changes. Our processes of doing building inspections, we had to deal with a 2-month non-essential construction lockdown practically. And we worked very closely with the building community to keep receiving applications and have them ready to go once the lockdown was over. 2020 was our first full year using Cloud Permit. And if we did not have Cloud Permit, I don't know where we would be today. Lucan Biddulph was the third municipality to sign on with Cloud Permit. Formerly it was known as Evolta. The province now, they have approximately 60 municipalities signed on, and most of those are running now, but others are soon to be up and running. So it's been very successful, and Lucan Biddulph and Middlesex Center were really the pioneers that helped get that established. And that has helped many municipalities to get through COVID because it allows for a paperless application system, and has really helped us be as efficient as we can with receiving permits, getting inspections out, and going through all of our processes. So we're very lucky to have signed on when we did prior to COVID, so we could we mastered it through the pandemic. I also have another apology for you that in my report I did not include the apartment building that started just this past fall, early winter. So my annual report does not include that in part of its statistics. And so what I will do, I will update this report and get it back to Tina to forward on to council. But an interesting statistic we'll see in table 2 of my report, I summarize the housing starts, or the activity for the year. And actually, I'm going to flip to table 3. This year, or this past year, 2020 was not quite an all-time low, but it's been since 2011 that we only had 22 new single detached dwellings approved in Lucan Biddulph. 22 compared to last year where we had 85 single detached dwellings. It sounds like a big downturn, but with the 22 single detached dwellings, we also had 47 townhomes and a 23 unit apartment building. So although our housing, the single detached numbers are almost at an all-time low, our new dwellings created, including the apartment building, are actually an all-time high, which comes up to 98 new units created in 2020. So it just shows that we have a good diversity of housing for people to move into, and it also shows the demand that Lucan has seen over the last 5 years or more. That the housing stock that we had just has gotten gobbled up, and I see council's approving or looking at more townhouses today, and we have some more subdivisions on the go. So I have no doubt that those 22 housing starts are going to increase quite a bit with the creation of those lots, and the additional townhomes and potential apartment. We're looking at another banner year this year. But it was just a very unique year last year, not just with COVID, but also with the near all-time low housing starts, or single starts, but the all-time high for new units created. I found that fairly interesting. If there's questions, I'm happy to answer them. Like I said, I will submit a revised report that includes the apartment building, as the number of permits is an all-time high. Number of new dwellings created is an all-time high, and our construction value is exceeded $30 million, which we've done just once. So again, a very good year. With regards to bylaw enforcement, we've had, I believe, 24 cases that we've had to look into in Lucan Biddulph. 24 cases that we've investigated for tidy yard complaints, zoning complaints, dogs at large, dogs biting, dogs barking, noise, and fencing. So there's been a good variety of matters that we've been involved in as well with regards to bylaw enforcement. If there's any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Okay, that's great. And that certainly is a good news report, that's for sure. Very exciting for our community. Any questions for Arnie? Councillor Mastarakis.
Yes, through you, Madam Mayor. Have you seen similar trends, Arnie, in other communities regarding townhouses and single family and apartments?
Yes, through the mayor, with regards to Middlesex Center alone, townhouses have been very popular. Plans of condominium rather than plans of subdivision seem to be very appealing to the developers, and Middlesex Center has had an absolutely incredible year. last year with townhouses, with condos, similar to what I think others have seen in this region as well as Lucan.
Okay, thank you, Arnie.
Anything else? Oh, yeah, go ahead, Arnie. Yeah.
Sorry, one additional piece of information council I think should be aware of. This year, Middlesex Centre has had a request from North Middlesex, Adelaide Metcalfe, Southwest Middlesex to share in our partnership of building inspection services. So those 3 municipalities and Middlesex Centre have entered into a service agreement similar to what we have with Lucan Biddulph, and Middlesex Centre has in turn hired 2 additional building inspectors that'll be starting in about 3 weeks. And in addition to that, last year was so busy for us, we did hire another building inspector. So we have 3 new staff that are in building division that'll have started in about the first quarter of this year. So right now we're keeping up with the demand, but it is a full 2 weeks right now to get a building permit. But I want to let council know, assure you that our service levels will be very good and they'll be maintained because we are bringing on 2 additional staff to help with those municipalities.
That's great. Thank you very much for that update. They just saw what a great relationship Lucan and Biddulph had with Middlesex Centre and wanted to be part of it. So it's good. Any other questions? I just had one on the bylaw side of things, Arnie, and just wondering if you'd experienced any complaints with COVID that were particular to gatherings and all of that.
Yeah, certainly through the mayor, we have. Generally, we will reach out. Let me see the best way to phrase this. We would reach out if we have social gatherings in people's driveways, people's homes. We do get calls from time to time from neighbors, and we would reach out to individual landowners. We have worked somewhat closely with the restaurants as the color coding came into effect through this fall. We worked with I think there was 3 restaurants in Lucan Biddulph that we worked closely with COVID and the openings, whether you can have 50 or 10 people or what it was. Yeah, COVID definitely has kept us busy in a lot of ways. Even in the dog parks or the dog park, it's people are either very afraid of it or people shrug it off, and it's tough when those 2 people come together.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you for that. If there aren't any other questions or comments on the year-end summary, then I would just ask for a verbal motion to accept the report for information. Mover and seconder, please. Councillor Regan and Deputy Mayor Manders. Oh, yep.
Do we do it subject to Arnie's updates?
Good call. Good catch. Yes, subject to the amendments as presented. Okay, all opposed to that? And that's carried. Thank you very much. Good to see you.
Yeah, you take care.
Have a nice night. Okay, now Catherine.
Thank you. Just a couple of things I wanted to mention. We are working on getting the water bills done, and they'll be out at the end of the month. And we're also working on getting 2020 figures ready for the auditors, and that is expected. The audit is supposed to start just after Easter for 2020. So lots of things to do. That's it.
Great. Thank you for that. Any questions for Catherine? Okay. Public Works, Jeff.
Yes, Madam Mayor, I have a couple things tonight. The first one, and there'll be a motion to follow this at the later on, but the 1952 Hardy Drain that runs from Corsi up along Richmond Street and heads along, follows kind of parallel there. We've had a request from multiple sources to increase that, to improve that drain. So I'm going to ask council to appoint Spreetz as our engineer on that. And I think the good news there is that that drain will end up playing part of Main Street storm, and as well as help some of the development in that area of town. So the second thing I just wanted to touch on was that and I don't think I touched on this, and the deputy mayor brought up sidewalks in our assessment, and I had talked about that, how we were conducting an assessment of sidewalks and roads and for the asset management plan. And the good news is we did get approval on funding on that. It's a joint project with a number of municipalities in the county, including the county itself. And so we did get approval for that, and the approval came in the form of a little over $15,000 to pay for that program. So great news there. And like I said, there'll be a report come to council in I'll call it the short term, late spring, and we'll review the assessment of our sidewalks in the municipality. So, and then the final thing I just wanted to touch on was, and again, this was brought up at the last council meeting, the sand salt shed. And I have talked to the ministry. We are allowed to stay there for one more year, and that they understand that we need a little bit of time to get everything organized in this situation. So that, to me, that's great news. So I would look to council, suggest to council that we look at getting some plans together, some engineering on a sand salt shed this year, with the desire to build in 2022, so that we're up and running for the fall of 2022. So I think it's all fallen into place. I don't think we have to rush anything. I don't think we're going to be left out in the cold either. So I just want to make sure that was an update on council for that. And I believe there's a motion to follow later in council for to move forward with the engineering of a shed. And so then that's all my updates as presently. I'll open if there's any questions, Madam Mayor.
Okay, thank you, Jeff. Questions for Jeff on what he's reported or anything else general in nature? Okay, Paul, Parks and Rec.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The first report I have is on the PRAC terms of reference revision. So as you know, we had a opening on our committee, and as we only had 3 people apply for the application, there's been a lot of conversation at the council level. I know when we talk strategic plan about encouraging volunteerism, and how we could best do that. So we felt at the PRAC that it might be an appropriate way to represent the growth that Lucan Biddulph has had. Especially, I've reached out to surrounding municipalities, see how their committees and sizes are, and so the motion was put forward to bring from 7 to 9 members. We thought that was a good way to, not dissuade these people that have applied. There's a small number. If we can accommodate them, I think it's a good way to promote the volunteerism in our community. So with that, we have discussed bringing forward a motion to council that the Parks and Recreation Advisory Committee recommend that the council amend section 3 under the current terms of reference to increase the member of PRAC from the current 7 voting members to 9.
Okay. Questions on that? It's great that you had interest in joining the committee. That's awesome. That's great. It's fantastic. Okay, I think the motion is, we'll deal with the motion later in our motion section, so.
Perfect. And then just the next memo, we thought it'd be good for council to know, you have residents approach you, you want to know what they can and cannot do in Lucan Biddulph. So I felt it was good to bring forward to council the current guidelines under orange and the section 22. There is a lot of confusion for residents with the section 22. As you know, they can go to South Huron, it doesn't apply to them. They can go to St. Mary's, it does not apply to them. So it's important to understand these things. One of the biggest conversations and conflicting ideas in orange is that section 22 in orange, there's some things that are stricter in orange than they are in section 22. And the answer for that is always you go with the most strict, obviously. So currently right now, under our fitness and exercise programs, we're allowed 10 participants and 1 instructor. That does not apply to team sports. Team sports, we're allowed 25 on a field of play that can be divided up into 2 groups of 12. You're allowed to do 3-on-3, 4-on-4, 5-on-5 play with no more than 12 on the entire play surface during that game with two teams of 12. So that ups our opportunities to the kids in town. They're happy to be able to play 5-on-5 with each other. All instructors must be masked. We can still separate our facility as we have before, almost treat them as different businesses, let's say. And indoors, we can't gather more than 50. So if there were someone to rent for, say, a meeting, it could be up to 50 as long as the allowable space can be had between each seat to address the spacing properly as well. Everyone must remain masked unless they're getting up to, when they get up from their seat to go to the washroom, or if they're eating, they can take off their mask. One thing that countywide we've all been kind of encouraging is no outside food or drink. It's not set by the health unit, but we felt there's no need to take your mask off. We're not a restaurant, so we felt that would help kind of lower the risk there. Just since I gave this report to council to view as information, we've also got some updates on outdoor sports. Now, outdoor sports are not subject to the Section 22, as we thought before. The Section 22 refers only to indoor sports as it's higher risk. So that being said, technically a field can allow for up to 100 people. We would still recommend no more than 25 on a play surface. If a group were to, say, for instance, soccer, you could divide the field in half and play 2 games on the field. You could easily do that within the 100. They wouldn't be against any regulations by doing that, but we're still trying to keep it to 25 if we can. I know the younger groups, we may be able to accommodate them better now that we know that we're allowed the up to 100. We still recommend only 1 spectator to keep that number down. We can get more kids on the field, and all groups must remain spaced while playing. And even for that, we're recommending that spectators maybe be on either side. If you had 2 soccer games, spectators on this side, spectators on this side, and that would help keep the distance between the groups. They would only be responsible for their particular area of play. So if there's baseball going on and soccer going on, we wouldn't be expecting soccer to maintain what baseball is doing or baseball maintain what soccer is doing. So that helps the groups know that they have a bit more flexibility within the rules than they thought before. So I'm really hopeful that is going to help their decision whether or not they're going to have a season or not.
That is encouraging, that's for sure. Questions for Paul? So just, I guess just an update, the ice is in, and I guess, who's it being used by? Is it being rented out to, because minor hockey is done, right? For this
minor hockey is done. The Access Hockey School is utilizing the ice. There's part of the agreement. In order to put the ice back in, they would have to commit to up to 50 hours a week, and they've met that. In fact, they keep adding more on. Other residents have been able to book in for some of the men's leagues, adult leagues have been able to book in spaces. We're trying to accommodate in skating club where we can, as they're looking at some more ice time, and it's fully rented at summer prime time rate now because this is beyond the normal season. So as long as we stay open, it's going to be a very, very good news story for the residents of Lucan-Medolph, I think.
Okay. So the skating club is utilizing some of the ice?
We're working with them right now to coordinate some ice time.
Okay. Any other questions for Paul? If not, then I would ask for a mover and a seconder to receive his report on the COVID response framework with regards to current color restrictions for information, please. Mover and seconder. Councillor Mastarakis and Councillor Westman. All opposed? And that's carried. Thanks, Paul. Economic development.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor. Just want to again remind everyone about the community improvement plan. So our open house is March 30th, and it will come to public meeting before council on April 6th. Notices have gone out in the paper and it's been posted on social media, but we'll continue to promote it to hopefully get more people to sign up to participate. We'll be having a brief Bacon Fest meeting later on this week to discuss 2021. That will be Thursday. And then the Scouts and Guides, again, will be doing their annual e-waste drop off at Market Street Park in April. Unfortunately, just because of COVID, we don't think we'll do the actual cleanup part of that day that we've done in the past, I don't know, 12 years. But excuse me, we will encourage residents and business owners to clean up around their property that day as well. I think that's all the quick updates.
Okay. Questions for Lisa? With regards to the CIP, the people that participated in the process, seems so long ago now, have they all been notified of the public meeting and all of that?
Not directly, but I definitely will send out an email to everyone to remind them.
Okay, thanks. Okay, if there's not any questions for Lisa, moving on to councillor comments. Councillor Regan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. If I may, I just have two. Just first, with the respect to the hockey program for Paul and his staff, I've just heard from a number of residents in my ward. They're just actually very thankful and grateful that there's a program now. I know a couple of my neighbors have their kids in the program. So thanks for the work you did that on, Paul, and bringing that to our community. And just really quickly, it's just the mayor touched on the 1-year COVID anniversary, or if we can call it that. But there were a couple of my neighbors and friends that were talking about the work that staff do in our community. And they said to me, it was kind of interesting. They said they actually watch our council meetings on YouTube and said, you understand the council members are not the stars of the show, it's your staff, because we listen to all these reports and some of them are very, very detailed. And they'd never actually watched council before or it had come to the meeting. So they just thought it was amazing. So he says, you know, like they do all the work and you guys just listen. And I said, well, they do. And he says, are you thanking them? He says, because, you know, he says, there's a lot of stuff that goes on between council meetings, you know, and it's just not about you guys. So, I mean, I think he was having a little fun with me, but he says, you are thanking them, and he was serious. So I just want to take this opportunity, if I can, Madam Mayor, for Ron and your staff. Thank you very much for the work for the last year. You're running our community. Thank you. I'm good.
Great.
All right.
Thank you, Councillor Regan. Any other councillor comments? Councillor Mastarakis.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. When we had the governance training, there was the gap that was identified in the code of conduct that we're addressing that Ron mentioned. But there was another gap in the respect in workplace policy that the trainer had identified. So are we going to go back and follow up on that?
Ron.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I actually went back through that whole recording, and I couldn't identify which section it was, but I guess it's a bit of a head scratcher to me, because we did have Dave Woodward, our municipal solicitor, review that whole document. So I guess it's up to council. If council wishes me to revisit that, we can do that. I don't know that you know, that's needed at this time, but it's a council decision.
Sorry, and Ron, and it was actually an item brought up in the original approval at the meeting when we passed it. The question was asked, if the matter goes to the mayor, what does the mayor do? And then we did have a discussion in my records where we talked about it. If there's an update to that we would update it, but it was accepted. And it was the same item that that was brought up during the governance training, that the matter goes, a complaint goes to the mayor. What does the mayor do? So whether it's 5 years from now, whatever. So I don't know if that question was asked specifically of Mr. Woodward. So if the matter goes to the mayor, what's the policy? How's it handled?
Ron?
If I may, Madam Mayor, again, I guess my answer is the same. If council collectively wishes me to do that, I can do that. But it is up, it's a council decision whether to reopen that or not.
And if it was to be reopened, how would that happen?
Oh, I would, because it's already passed, I guess it's a revisit. You would be revisiting an already passed motion. I would have to do some research on that, but I think the way to do it is to make a motion that has to be passed by 2/3 to reopen it and then proceed forward. Conversely, that's a very technical way. It's up to council if they wish to instruct me as their member of staff to research that and move forward with Mr. Woodward, then that is your second option.
I'd like to put that forward myself because it was identified by the governance trainer, specifically that item. And I recall from a previous meeting, it was not covered and it was brought up at the time of passing of the initial policy.
So you'd like to make a motion to reopen it?
Right, for that specific item.
On what if a complaint goes to the mayor, just on
Right.
that?
In respect of workplace, what's the procedure?
Okay. Are you making that motion now?
Yes, if that's correct protocol, sure.
I think technically we should be doing this probably through a notice of motion because it would be a reopening of a policy. But I guess I would look to my clerk for confirmation of that.
Madam Mayor, I believe you're right. On a technical basis, that is the way it is supposed to work. So if that is the wish of council, we can take your notice of motion, bring it forward at the next meeting and present it. You know, I do know there are 2 notice of motion included in tonight's package. So it follows that this would be the normal way to do that.
Okay.
So I'll put a notice of motion in.
Okay. All right. Okay, was that it, Councillor Mastarakis? And we'll circle back to that exact wording when we get to that section, but was that it?
Yes, I'll just send an email in with the wording if that's okay. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks. Any other councillor comments? Thought I saw another hand up. Councillor Westman.
Yeah, just a little piece of positive news coming with spring just a week away. Our community gardens in Granton are planning their year, and with some modifications and compliance with the COVID protocols, there's going to be a youth program again in some form or another, and we're excited about that because we've got lots of kids interested and a lot of volunteers. Well, not a lot, but a few volunteers and parents getting involved. So our little garden project is getting back on track. So it's going to be really exciting for the year. And I know it'll be exciting for the food bank as well, because a lot of the produce that's grown there is donated to the food bank. And our little sprouts is what we call the kids. They'll be learning how to garden, how to take care of their plants, and also how to prepare food with them and share with their families. So it's a really good program, and hats off to all the volunteers that are doing the work. So that's great.
Okay, thank you for that, Councillor Westman. Just congratulations to Bonnie Foran for being able to figure out how to get that up and running and do it safely, because I think that was missed last year. And I know I saw a post on the Granton Park or the Granton community page that if you've got any extra craft supplies, she would take them. So if you have any extra craft supplies, certainly you can drop them up here and I can take them over to Bonnie's too. So make sure you congratulate her and thank her for that, Alex. Okay, any other councillor comments? Okay, moving on to notices of motion. So we had 2 presented to us last last meeting. And since we haven't really used this tool before, I just wanted to go over the procedure. So the clerk will read the motions and in the order that they are. So the first one will be dealt with, and then the person that presented the notice of motion will be asked if he or she is moving it, and then there will be the question will be asked for a seconder, and if there is a seconder, then there will be a discussion that will follow after that, and then it will be voted on, and then we'd move on to the second one. So, Ron.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So the first one was submitted by Deputy Mayor Dave Manners, and it reads that council directs staff to bring forward a report regarding the ongoing feasibility of selling dog tags. So that is your first motion.
That's the first motion. And Deputy Mayor Manders, are you moving that?
Yes, I'll move that.
Okay, and is there a seconder for this motion? Councillor Regan. Okay, so it is, the motion's on the floor now for discussion. So I guess I will turn to you, Deputy Mayor Manders, for any background on this request.
Yeah, the reason I asked for it, I do feel that we've lost the intent for the purpose of the dog tag and collecting the money for the dog tag. It'll be interesting, you know, hopefully we get the support to I think this is valuable staff time, a little bit of staff time used on this. Because I alluded last meeting that I felt it was almost like a tax grab. It's like if you're an honest person, you own a dog, we're gonna collect $20. If you're incompliant, you know, I don't think we really go after those people that much that are incompliant. It was interesting hearing Ernie's report of, you know, 24 bylaw infractions, which was fencing, tidy bylaw, dogs, noise. And I am a believer that, you know, those that are creating the bylaw infractions, we should be finding out a way to properly charge that time, which, you know, the tidy bylaw I am aware of, which, you know, you give the warnings if it doesn't, you know, if they're not compliant, we can go in there and make it compliant and it's added to their taxes. So it's, you know, you can cover those costs. And I think it's important as opposed to in my 12 years on council. It's funny, I've never heard us say, you know, we've got a deficit or we've got a surplus in the dog tag fund that we need to put the dog tag fund up. It just seems like it's collected without reason. And I think we like to just, again, it's, you know, nowadays, when a dog is off leash or they're lost, there's protocol. I think there is some expense the owner does incur by going to the kennel to go pick it up. So it is, you know, and I think maybe back in the day, it was more about a lost dog trying to find the owner, where now, again, it's amazing on Facebook and social media, you know, when there is a dog lost, and there is protocol too when there's a dog lost now compared to back then. But I do feel it's I just don't think it's an effective way to just, I think it's lost its effectiveness. So I hope to get support on a review of this.
Any other questions or comments on the request for the report on the feasibility? Councillor Regan.
Hi, I just wanted to ask, is there a sort of a time frame when we start collecting the dog tag, like the fees for the dog tags, or is that just something that happens throughout the year? The reason I'm just asking, I didn't know whether or not the report needs to be a little more timely because we're just starting into 2021. Or would it be retro if we decided not to do it for this year? If there may be people already that have bought them.
It would be for 20.
Ron, maybe? Oh, sorry, Dave,
Ron
sorry.
can answer that. I think Ron can answer that.
Okay.
But I would say I don't think that this is the discussion to get into the technicalities. That a lot of that will come out, I'm sure, in the feasibility of the report should this pass.
All right.
Ron, did you have anything though that you wanted to add to that?
Through you, Madam Mayor, to Councillor Regan. It's sort of a long process that starts at the beginning of the year. Anybody can come in and sort of pay for their dog tag. Where it does get a little messy is when it overlaps with the interim billing, because if you haven't paid for a dog tag, it automatically flows through onto your tax bill. And that's where we see a little bit of misunderstandings on the part of some ratepayers. And it does cause us, to the Deputy Mayor's point, it does take a lot of time. And sometimes there's some very angry people that poor Tracy and Catherine and Maggie at the front desk have to deal with. So yeah, I do think this is a rather timely, and obviously I think the Deputy Mayor saw what happened at the city of Woodstock, where I absolutely did away with any dog tags whatsoever. So there are examples out there that we will look to for information.
Any other questions or comments on this?
Yeah, certainly my, just to mention to Daniel's comment, my intent or my thought was that you correctly stated it, just obviously waiting for the report and to discuss depending on what comes out of the report. But at that time, for myself, and when I made the motion, was certainly would be in effect for the next year. So anyways, but.
Councillor Westman?
Yeah, I can confer with Deputy Mayor Manders. I've had some ratepayers reach out to me this year, raising concern about the dog tag being just a money grab, and that since we don't necessarily go chasing after it, we don't send people around door to door. There are people falling through the cracks that may have dogs that didn't have them last year. We're not billing them properly or whatever. I would be in full support of dispensing with dog tags altogether, and finding a better solution that's, I think, more fair to all citizens, right? So that's my 2 cents.
Thanks. And just a reminder that the motion is just to have the report on the feasibility of the program. Okay, Councillor Masterakis.
And just maybe updating my pecuniary interest, I've got 2 dogs. So as pet owners, can we actually, just thought I disclose in the process.
I even made it, and I've got a dog. So
Yes. Okay, so if there's no other further comment or questions, then the motion on the floor, as you know, and I would ask, I will ask for the vote now, and all opposed to the motion on the floor. And that's carried. Thank you very much. Okay, moving on to the next notice of motion.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The second motion was put forth by Councillor Masterakis, and it reads that staff be instructed to prepare a report on implementing a policy for a CAO performance appraisal following the guidelines as set out by the Canadian Association of Municipal Administrators. The report to be prepared by April 30th, 2021.
Okay, and Councillor Masterakis, are you moving that? Yeah.
Yes, I am.
Okay, thank you. And a seconder for that? And I'll ask again, a seconder for that? Seeing no seconder, then the motion doesn't move forward. And then we'll circle back to your request for notice of motion that you mentioned in the councillor's comments, and just so that it can be included in this section, you'll email the wording with regards to the respect in workplace policy.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Okay, moving on to our motions or accounts paid. Maybe before I do that, I probably should have done this in the councillor comments, but since tomorrow is St. Patrick's Day, I would just ask everybody to remember that we can all celebrate our Irish heritage, but to do it safely, to try and do it virtually. And if you're looking for a special meal, maybe think of takeout from one of our local eateries and celebrate with your family at home. So happy St. Patrick's Day, everyone. A little different than what we're used to, but I'm sure we'll all find a way to celebrate. Okay, accounts paid. Resolved. The Council of the Township of Lucan Biddulph received the attached accounts as paid for information as follows. For February 2021, $292,717.36. Can I get a mover and seconder for that, please? Councillor Westman and Councillor Regan. All opposed? And that's carried. Moving on to our motions. Resolved that the council adopt the recommendation brought forward by the Parks and Recreation Advisory Committee to amend the terms of reference for PRAC to increase the membership of the committee from the current 7 members to 9, and instruct staff to bring forth the appropriate amendment to the appointment bylaw. Can I get a mover and seconder for that, please? Deputy Mayor Manders and Councillor Regan. All opposed? And that's carried. Resolved that the Council of the Township of Lucan-Badolph authorize Tina Murder and Lisa DeBoer to attend the AMCTO virtual conference from June 14th to 16th, 2021 at a registration cost of $490 plus HST per person. A mover and seconder for that, please. Councillor Westman and Deputy Mayor Manders. All opposed? And that's carried. Resolved that the council appoints Street Associates London Limited under Section 4 or 78 of the Drainage Act to prepare a drainage report for the requested work to the Hardy Drain 1952, subject to the required 30 days notice to the applicable conservation authority. And can I get a mover and seconder for that one, please? Councillor Regan and Councillor Westman. All opposed? And that's carried. Resolved that the council direct staff to undertake engineering on a sand salt shed in 2021 to be constructed in 2022. And a mover and seconder for that, please. Councillor Mastarakis and Councillor Westman. All opposed? And that's carried. Resolved that if no one cares to speak to these bylaws on their first, second, and third reading, that they be considered to have been read a first time and passed, read a second time and passed, read a third time and passed, and that they be numbered 19-2021, the fees bylaw, 20-2021, the interim borrowing bylaw, 21-2021, the confirming bylaw. A mover and seconder for that, please. Councillor Regan and a seconder, Deputy Mayor, and all opposed. And that's carried. And resolved that the council meeting be adjourned at 8:07 p.m. A mover and a seconder for that, please. Councillor Regan and Councillor Mastarakis.